Good morning. This is the time and place for the zoning administrator's hearing for June 3, 2009. My name is Edith Fuentes, and I will be conducting the hearing as hearing officer. We have 3 cases today, and relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. Let me just quickly go through our hearing procedure. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a variance shall be granted if 4 required findings are present. 1. That the strict application of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. 2. That there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not apply generally to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. 3. That the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. And 4, that the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. Also, under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a conditional use permit shall be granted if 4 required findings are present. 1. That the proposed use will be consistent with the elements and objectives of the general plan. 2. That the use and its associated structures and facilities will not be detrimental to the public health or safety, the general welfare, or the environment. 3. That the use and facilities will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses or impede the normal development of surrounding property. And 4. That adequate public and private facilities will be provided for the use. For applications involving wireless telecommunication facilities, the 2 findings, in addition to the previously mentioned 4 required findings, shall be made. That no other feasible alternative site exists beyond the distance of 300 feet or more from residential zones, and that specific physical or technical factors make infeasible the use of co-location upon a pre-existing antenna support structure or pre-existing building or structure. If the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria just described, then the zoning administrator can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices, which were mailed to property owners located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will read the description of the application or the request, and then read reports received from other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. The case planner will make a brief presentation and overview of the case and will make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and any interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak. Again, clearly stating both name and address within a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to testimonies given by preceding speakers within a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and the case taken under submission. After the hearing, The decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. I would like to emphasize that the date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from our Building and Safety Section Permit Services Center located on the same floor of this building. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of these speaker forms which have been provided by the front door and submit it to our planning assistant. I would like to also inform everyone that the official proceedings of the zoning administrator's hearing are recorded on tape as part of public record. Our first case is variance 2009-012. Location is 1601 Grandview Avenue. Applicant is Juliet Ann Sedlasek. And this is an application for standards variance to allow the floor area ratio on the site to exceed the amount allowed by code. Property is located in the R1 Low Density Residential Floor Area District Number 1, described as a portion of Lot 1, Tract Number 3891. And let me just quickly go through some of the comments we received. Engineering section, they have a few requirements. No new walls, footings, or any portion thereof shall be constructed within the public right-of-way. A drainage plan for engineering division's review and approval shall be submitted and made part of the building plans. Method of discharge of all on-site drainage shall be approved by the city engineer. And separate permits are required for all work within the public right-of-way. And the applicant shall bear all fees for the necessary permits and construction inspections. Our maintenance services administration, they have a just recommendations related to existing trees. 5 street trees, okay. Okay. And I'm assuming the live oak tree is not going to be affected by this project. So you may want to address that later on. Okay. I also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wow, 6, 7, 8, about 9 letters, and 3 more coming.
No, there's about 7 more.
7 more. Okay. Basically in support of the application, so I'm just going to go through. Okay. Resident and owner of 1625 Grandview Avenue in support. 1531 Bel Air in support. 1531 Bel Air. 1624 Grandview. Another from 1521 Bel Air. 1504 Bel Air. 1610 Grandview. 1606 Grandview. 1616 Grandview. 1559 Grandview. 1602 Grandview. 1560 Grandview. 1566 Grandview. 1552 Grandview Avenue, and 1514 Bel Air Drive. Okay.
And that's, oops, somewhere in that pack, I also did a map showing the location of the people who had submitted those letters in support.
Yes, you have the neighborhood supporting map. Okay, let's hear from the case planner.
So this proposal is for a variance to allow the project to exceed. Oh, okay. I'm Jeff Hamilton, senior planner, and this is a proposal to allow the project to exceed the floor area ratio allowed in the code. Because this is in the R1 zone, the floor area ratio is somewhat restricted. It's 0.3 for the first 10,000 square feet of lot area and 0.1 for every 1,000 square feet above that. On this property, the maximum allowable square footage is 3,610 square feet, and with the proposed 499 square foot guest house, the total floor area would be 3,714 square feet. The property is located at the corner of Grandview and Bel Air, as can be seen in the aerial photograph shown up on the screen. The photographs here on the board give a nice panorama of the view of the property from the Grandview side and from the Bel Air side. This is the general location of where the guest house would be, behind this wall here. The wall, if approved, would also be reconstructed as part of the proposal to move it back to an appropriate distance, and then it would be rebuilt at basically the same height. This panorama here shows the location inside the wall on the property where this guest house would be located, and then the other pictures provide additional context. This plan shows the elevations of the proposed guest house and the new wall that would help screen it from the street. The property, based on a review of the application and the four findings, it is my recommendation or my opinion that the property is neither unique in size or shape and already has, quite obviously, a substantial house on it. There are no exceptional circumstances applicable to the property other than the slightly odd shape. Given the size of the property and the shape, it does not constrain its development, as evidenced by the fact that there already is a large house on the property. In addition, the property can have a guest house. It just would have to be 104 square feet smaller than what is proposed. So there's no question about whether or not they can have a guest house. It does not appear that granting the variance would be detrimental to the neighborhood in terms of the appearance of the guest house behind the house or behind the wall. The wall would largely screen it from view, and we have evidence that the neighbors do not object in any event. Again, adding this guest house to the property won't change materially the appearance of the property from the street, given the fact that the wall is already there, providing significant screening. I do think that granting the variance would enable the property to be continued to be maintained and developed in accordance with the wishes of the owners. However, fundamentally, the resulting floor area would exceed the standards established to avoid overdevelopment on single-family properties like this one. To review the history a little bit, the applicant came into the counter some time ago and had proposed the guest house and I worked with them on revising the project to meet so that we could approve it without going to design review, doing it as a design review exemption, and we achieved a design that I felt was successful. But during the plan check process for the building permit, I noted that I had overlooked the FAR problem. And the problem was that the homeowners were relying on an old zoning standard of just 0.3 for the entire property and not the 0.3 for the first 10,000 square feet. So at that point, I advised the applicants that they would need to either make the property, the guest house, smaller, or they would need to apply for a variance. Some of the applicants' arguments, I'm not going to go into all of them, but some of the applicants' arguments are that the property is a unique shape and that many residents in the neighborhood have guest houses already permitted by the municipal code. I think the property is slightly unique in shape, but the size is such that the shape doesn't provide any real constraint on the use of the property. The fact that other neighborhood residents have guest houses implies that this property should be entitled to one, but that is not a relevant way to consider approving a variance. The applicant asserts that the requested variance will be in keeping with the objectives of the ordinance since the design of the guest house is coordinated with the house and no other additions will be possible after this. As we've previously stated, granting the variance will promote property improvement and development, but nevertheless, the proposal will exceed the allowable FAR. To summarize, staff believes that it cannot be demonstrated that the property is uniquely burdened by the FAR regulation, that the property has already been developed with a substantial single-family house, and the variance could be avoided by simply making the guest house 395 square feet in area rather than 499, and that there are therefore insufficient grounds to grant the variance. In particular, findings A and B of the 4 findings cannot be made. That concludes my staff report.
Okay. Let me hear from the applicant first, and then I may have a few questions to ask you. Okay, to present the case, Juliet Sedlacek.
Thank you. I'm Juliet. One of the major reasons that we're here today is upon one of the meetings that I had with Mr. Hamilton and Ms. Stephanie Reich back in January 5th of 2009, I stated to the both of them that I had the incorrect floor area ratio. Upon that meeting, Mr. Hamilton proceeded to follow through with the project by listing a set of criteria. I think there were 5 criteria, and several of which were not in the same tone that Ms. Reich had approved the proper design criteria for the project. So I was, number one, waiting for somebody to tell me that to check the floor area ratio to make sure that I had everything in compliance. So upon that meeting, Mr. Hamilton and I proceeded to go through with the steps of the development of the project, which led into 2 modifications of structural engineering, which I'm deeming as being a financial hardship to the homeowners, as well as two design changes that were substantial design changes that required more than 20 hours worth of architectural coordination and drafting. And I have those generations of drawings present if you'd like to take them for review. The second thing is I also, again, had a meeting with Mr. Hamilton on January 28th of 2009 to discuss the conditions that he had brought back prior to the meeting with Stephanie Reich, one of which required the maximum height to be 12 feet from the Bel Air side of the street, which only really allowed a 6.5 to 7 foot height at the level of the property where we are proposed to build. And Stephanie Reich had approved that location upon our meeting that we had on January 5th. We had gone over several options of where we could actually locate the proposed guest house, as well as defining the criteria of moving the wall back and allowing the wall to be part of the foundation of the house. Now, upon that criteria, some of Mr. Hamilton's conditions were within the same tone of that meeting and some were not. So this meeting on January 28th, Mrs. Farewell and I called upon another architect who was working with our contractor to come in and sit in on the meeting. And we had a discussion with Mr. Hamilton, and we really talked about this notion of the roof height, because he was concerned that the roof was going to be too high or just as high as the house. Now, Stephanie Reich said she didn't have a problem as long as we kept the roof pitch the same. So upon that meeting that we had with another consultant, Mr. Hamilton, only 3 weeks later, I once again asked to make sure if the floor area ratio was in keeping with the code and every other criteria that we had discussed was within our regulations. Therefore, just so we could proceed, because we had started this project really kind of in November, and we were trying to break ground in January so that the project could be built right before the summer. So upon that meeting, then I had submitted another set of drawings with Mr. Hamilton, and again, somewhere in the middle of February, upon getting approval for a stamp, Mr. Hamilton had requested that I modify the roof once again to be this inverse butterfly roof, which completely changed the shear walls and the roof beam, which was another set of structural calculations, and once again, having to not completely redo, but do a substantial amount of modifications to the drawings at hand. All this time that he had known and Miss Stephanie Reich had known, and Stephanie Reich, upon our meeting on January 5th, had asked Mr. Hamilton before proceeding to check the floor area ratio and then give me the rest of the qualifications for the project. And so those are my evidence of financial hardship and burden. I can also...
No, I was just gonna mention economic hardship is not the reason for granting any variance. So I think it's going to help your case a lot better. You've gone basically through the history of what happened as far as the error or the omission of the 0.10% floor area ratio. What's really going to help your case is if you go through the 4 findings, go through them one by one, tell me what's the practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship. I can find finding B, which Mr. Hamilton said there's a little bit uniqueness on the property as far as the shape, location, being on a corner, existing structures. So it's really going to help your case if you go through the 4 findings instead of the history of the omission. I already know about that, so go on because you have a few more minutes
Okay,
left.
the hardships that the homeowners and applicant will endure are material and economic hardships. The homeowners have included most of these changes to be pertaining with the budget. The second hardship is that upon our breaking ground date of January, Mr. and Mrs. Farewell have taken upon their elderly mother to live in the house, and they're taking care of her. Part of the reason that we have applied for the proposed guest house is in an extreme case where she would have to have a live-in nurse. The matriarch, Mrs. Farewell, could be moved back there and live comfortably. So part of what I was trying to accomplish as a designer, the architectural designer, is to make sure that everything was kind of keeping within ADA regulations and to design a space that not only complied with the code, which is why I stress so much about knowing and making sure I was in compliance with the code, is just to make sure that I can maneuver and get everything in there. Now, while Mrs. Farewell is actually living comfortably in their house, Mrs. Farewell's oldest son, who is in college right now, has been displaced and now doesn't have a place to stay. So the guest house would function for Joe to live in during the summer while he's home, and Christmas time, with the hope that he will go on and continue to higher studies. And this can kind of be a place that would not only serve as a unit, a place for him to keep his stuff, but also a place for him to study, as well as possibly, a family, an area for the family. So the notion of losing 104 square feet really affects the design in a lot of ways.
That's exactly what I want you to address. If I cut the project by 100 square feet, what are you gonna lose? So
I'm
tell
losing
me.
my ADA accessibility, and I'm really losing a lot of opportunities that I'd already previously worked with the city and designed, into making this more accessible. Not only in just looking at Mrs. Farewell and getting a wheelchair up, but accessibility to the rest of the family and people that will be walking in and on in the site. The second point about the exceptional circumstances, I don't really think I have to go into so much
Do
other
you know
than
do you know when the house was built?
the house was built in actually the lot was sectioned. The lot was sectioned off in 1932, and I think Mrs. Farewell's father, Joe Edwards, obtained the property someplace in the early 40s.
Okay.
The building permit history indicates the house was built in August 1950.
50?
50. 50.
50. And also, Jeff, is this part of the any historic districting area or proposed? Or
No, not.
because this is in Grandview, I just noticed.
Right, it's sort of near the Artavine Historic
Area.
District, but it's not in that
Right,
district.
okay. Go ahead.
So the exceptional circumstances on the side, I would just mention if you zoom out on the 1 to 200 vicinity map, if you look at the lot, it's the only lot that has it's literally almost a square. Everything else, it's a rectangle, but
Right.
it's literally almost a square, and everything is kind of elongated. And therefore, just proving that when I did go over other possible locations, which would have drastically changed the size, and it could have changed the shape, and it could have potentially also changed the height of this project. Having known these floor area ratio, having known the error at the beginning of the design phase, I could have taken into consideration and actually really chosen the best location and the best space for the project. I just really hate at such late in the game because I've got my engineer stamped on the drawings. I've got all my red line corrections ready to go. I'm ready to submit, and we're ready to get a plan and start building, pertaining that we can absolve this matter. Because this is my first project on my own. I've worked for many architects in the last 7 years upon graduation. But I really feel that it's my opportunity to give this family, number one, a great piece of architecture. Number two, really increase the property of the lot. And I will say that I live right across the street from the Farewell, so when I look out my bedroom window, I see this fence and I see this property. And for most of my life, because our families have lived in these lots since they were purchased back in the 50s. And I feel like that it's my responsibility to give this family the best possible architectural display. Number one, that they're putting their hard-earned money into. I don't want to nickel and dime this project, knowing that somebody is working hard to get this built for a kind of, I don't want to say a desperate move, but the care of a grandmother, and having her being a part of the family is something that is an adjustment to the family, and it's a joy to the family, but it's also a compromise to a lot of people. And I would like to provide a space that makes living and having the family member as fun and accessible as possible.
Okay. And just to add, this is one of the few tracks on the left side of Grandview Avenue that has regular size lots. A lot of them are just elongated, straight kind of. I can look at track 6696 and Valentine track. This is along that same unique shape of lots that they have. So that's another uniqueness about the property.
And if you look at the colored plot plan, you can see that the Grandview facing street and that corner lot, there's almost 50%. We have almost 60% green space per buildable space. There's a substantial amount of green space. I've also incorporated in my design lots of drought-resistant natural vegetation to sit in that front foot setback. We've incorporated 3 citrus trees that are going to provide not only natural beauty, but also, a kind of a fruit to the family and the neighborhood. So I've also incorporated a lot of green elements into the design, as well as making sure that the roof lines drain into planters, so there isn't a lot of runoff that goes to the streets. All the water is going to be directly transferred into the ground to avoid street runoff.
Okay. I think you made your case. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, they're asking for a .10 floor area ratio above the. Is that the only item that they're going to have to go for a variance, or everything else as far as code?
Yeah, there are
they
no other
meet.
there are no other code
Okay.
code issues.
And so it boils down. Bottom line is
104 square feet.
104 square feet. And tell me, in your honest opinion, is 104 square feet, do you think that's excessive as far as floor area ratio is concerned, or?
It depends. I guess it depends on one's perspective. If you take a narrow look at the code and you look at the regulations strictly as a
That's the word
constructionist,
I was looking at.
then
the
it-
strict application of the
a
ordinance.
strict application would indicate that you shouldn't do this because it exceeds the code. It exceeds what the intent is, which is to prevent overbuilding and overdevelopment of a site. And we've had other people make the argument that if you allow this here, then where would you stop? I mean, maybe somebody else next door or down the street or in another part of the neighborhood might say, well, they got an extra 100 square feet, give me an extra 100 or 150 or whatever. And although this may not be objectionable to this location or these neighbors, it may be more problematic elsewhere. And if we don't rely on these standards, then what do we have to go by to make our decisions? On the other hand, on this property, in this location, given the fact that it's screened and it's all at the first floor level, and it's screened by the wall, will it really harm the neighborhood appearance? I don't think it'll harm the appearance of the neighborhood necessarily, but that's somewhat of a broader perspective. I don't know which perspective is right. That's your decision. Those are my opinions.
That's exactly the reason I'm trying to extract that from you is I look at each case on a case-by-case basis. What's applicable to this one may not be applicable to the next one. So it depends on how you justify the need for that additional 0.10%. So with that, I have another speaker. Let's give her 5 minutes. Ellen Farewell. Thank you, Jen.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Farewell, and my husband and I moved into my family home, was born and raised there, married in the backyard, and we moved my mother-in-law in. She is actually now using a walker. She goes between a walker and a wheelchair. She's 95, but she's mentally sharp as a tack. At that point, we had to move our boys into one room. And people say, when your kids go off to college, you don't see them anymore. Well, guess what? They come home. He goes to Claremont McKenna College. He's home for 3 months now. And he and his brother are ready to kill each other. 2 teenagers in a pretty small room. So it is a hardship. And I know we were hearing about the fact that a mistake was made. I actually came to a meeting with our builder and another architect and Juliet, who in good faith kept coming back again and again with plans. This overlooking, which Mr. Hamilton has admitted, the FAR is, to me, something that we shouldn't be penalized for. We should not have, it's oppressive, it's harsh. And what is 104 square feet? I may have a caregiver with my mother-in-law in there, and I'm telling you, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. It's enough to make it a comfortable living unit. Right now, it would be for our son, but I don't want full-time caregivers in the home 24 hours a day. So if we move to that point, I would move her out there. And as our builder said, it would make a big difference. What's going to happen if you grant it, then we can get started right away. And our builder said our son will be able to get out there for part of the summer. And again, my mother-in-law's on shaky ground, so who knows? So it's going to be built. We're anxious. We're going to build this one way or another. If you check on the approval list, are the people right behind us, the Svihars. They are thrilled to death because when we move this wall back, we're going to be planting in front of the fence. It's going to be lovely. We're going to add rose bushes all in there. So we're keeping with the flavor of the neighborhood. I personally marched up up and down Grandview. People love our house, and we have kept it up so nice. If we don't get the variance, and I think this is a particular case, if I would have known we were going to have to go through this, and in our meeting with Mr. Hamilton, he told me we didn't need a variance. Nothing was mentioned about this oversight. I thought we were going to get the stamp and get going right away. Would we be here? No. I really didn't want to have to get a variance, but now that we are, let's do it. And are we going to have to redesign this? Am I going to have, my husband and I have to pay for more engineering, more Title 24? How many more costs are you going to put on us? How many, you heard how many design review changes we had to do. This case for a little guest house has been unbelievable. It's been a saga. We started in November. We're in summer. So please, I am imploring you to consider this as a case, one case basis. And I really appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak in support or in opposition to this application? Seeing none, do you have any closing comments, Jillian?
I have the
You may want to come.
drawings if you'd like to look at. I don't know if that would help, but
You may want to come up here and speak in front of the microphone.
Let's bring the whole bundle.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that everything that Mrs. Fairwell said is true, and this is the stack of revisions that we have. But I have this final set of drawings right here that has every stamp except for the planning department and building and safety won't stamp until the planning department stamps. But as soon as we get out of here with an approval, I'm going to march down here and submit these drawings to the plan checker, get the plan check calculations done over the counter, because I can do that, because I have everything written down, and Mrs. Farrell and I can apply for this permit and we can get started.
Okay. Thank you very much. Jeff, do you have any closing comments?
I just want to say, for the record, I certainly apologize for overlooking the FAR as long as I did. That's a fundamental thing that a planner should be looking for and checking for.
And it happens. Once in a while it happens. We have omissions and errors.
But I want to take this opportunity to apologize to the Farewells and to Juliet. Juliet especially has been very good to work with. She's been very responsive to our requests to make some modifications to try to get an approvable project. And
Okay.
I can't say any more than that.
Good.
Not on the record.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead, take this case under submission, and we'll let you know. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Our next case is conditional use permit 2009-002. Location is 1250 Baudry Boulevard. This is an application for a conditional use permit to allow and maintain a telecommunications facilities in the ROS Residential Open Space Zone, Floor Area District 3, described as portion of east half of the southeast quarter of Section 5, Township 1, North Range 13 West, in the city of Glendale. And let me just quickly go through some of the comments. Okay. Okay. Did we get any comments from our wireless telecommunications section? Steve Ronick?
I'm not too sure. Everything should be in there, but I haven't heard any.
It showed checked in, but yeah, I couldn't find it. That's okay. Okay, no major issues or concerns from any department, so present the case.
Thank you, Zoning Administrator. Once again, the case before you is PCUP 2009-02 at 1250 Beaudry Boulevard. Located in the ROS zone, this project is category exempt from CEQA.
This is a renewal. or
Well-
did the permit expire or something?
The permit did expire.
Okay.
Yes.
So, that's- thank you.
I'll go into that to explain which conditional use permit did permit it and when it expired. I'm just going to describe a little bit to begin with the existing property. It's the subject property is located within the Verdugo Mountains, and it's surrounded by special recreational zone properties and ROS, which is residential open space properties. The property is approximately 80 acres, and it's rectangular in shape. The existing site configuration consists of 7 wireless telecommunication towers, an underground tank, underground equipment shelter, and an above ground generator enclosure. The background of the property is the site was previously approved by the zoning administrator under conditional use permit number 10442-CU back in 2003 of January 9th. This conditional use permit had expired on January 31st of 2008. On the staff's analysis, the existing radio, television, and public services broadcast facility has been in operation approximately 50 years. The public broadcast service provided by this location provides continuing coverage of, in case of an emergency or scheduled shutdown, radio and television stations' main facilities on Mount Wilson. During that time, the planning department records indicate there has not been any negative impacts to surrounding areas, and there was no comments or major issues have been addressed by the other city departments. Recommendation by staff is that staff believes all the findings can be made in positive manner. As proposed, without any expansion or intensification, staff recommends approval of this project with the listing conditions within the drafted staff report. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's here present. I'm available for any questions.
Okay. See. There's an April 2008 conditional use permit application. This is for the additional 6 microwave antennas, right?
That's correct. It's for a co-location.
Right, and that's still in effect?
That's correct. That one will expire April 11th, 2018.
Okay. Thank you. Just want to make sure it's the same property. Valerie Muller. Welcome back.
Good morning.
Morning. Give me your name and address.
My name is Valerie Mueller. I'm the consultant with Justice and Associates at 4155 Outer Traffic Circle in Long Beach, California. You have any questions?
Well, you're supposed to convince me why I should continue or give you continuation of it. Have a copy of your application form.
Yes.
The 4 findings. You can just quickly go through that. And one thing you don't do at zoning administrator's hearing is just come barehanded. Okay, so tell me why we should allow you to continue.
Okay, well, as stated, this facility has been in operation in about 50 years. No changes are proposed.
Okay.
They're continuing what's already existing. As also stated, there were never any issues with it, and you can also see in the photographic survey, it's not a great impact. So we request that another conditional use permit will be granted for 10 years.
Okay. Is everything in good shape, good condition, well maintained? Did you go out there, take a look?
I actually did go up there with Steve Ronick. That's why I'm kind of surprised that there weren't any.
Maybe he forgot to.
Possibly,
send it in.
you know.
Okay. That's just what I want to make sure is he's seen it and he's okay. Okay, and I was going to try and see if we can wrap everything under the same date so that when you come for renewal, you don't come for one and then come That's why I looked at the 2008.
Co-location.
Maybe if the renewal date for this conditional use permit would coincide with this dish, you only have to come here once and
Okay.
not every 2 years or so. Is there anything as far as existing conditions that you're not able to meet, or is everything still acceptable, feasible, okay?
Everything acceptable?
Okay, so I know I'm not gonna belabor the issues. Okay, no changes, 50 years, no issues, no code enforcement. Everything looks good, so I guess that's all I wanted to know.
Okay,
Thank you.
you very much.
Scott Mason.
Yes, hi. My name is Scott Mason. I'm the Director of Engineering for CBS Radio for the West Coast. I've actually been involved with this particular transmitter site since May of 1979. We moved one of our most important radio stations up there in 1984 from another site, Flint Peak, which is also in the city of Glendale, for better coverage. The main station that's up there for us is KROQ FM, K-Rock. It's what they call an LP2 EAS radio station. It means it's second-tier priority for the emergency alert system. It is nearly impossible to move an FM radio station these days, not only for financial reasons, but more importantly for the federal communications reasons. There are a number of short spacing rules that we have to go by, where other radio stations on the same frequency or on the first or second adjacent frequencies all come into play. So moving radio stations, even a couple hundred feet, at least FM broadcast stations, is very, very difficult. We have a great deal of backup facilities on that site. As previously mentioned, all of our Mount Wilson stations also have backups on that particular site. We pride ourselves as broadcasters in the public interest. We broadcast in the public interest as a public trustee. I know myself because I was on the radio during the Northridge earthquake, and I know the importance of radio, and we feel it's a great community service, and we appreciate the city of Glendale being such a gracious host to us at that site for all these years. And if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Good plug. Okay, well, I'm very familiar with the place also, so we thank you also for all the help during emergency hours. And is there anybody else here who would like to speak in support or in opposition? Do you have any closing comments? No? Okay, I have no further questions, so I just want to make sure everything is well maintained. That's all. And I'm going to go ahead. Do you have any closing comments?
None.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead, take this case under submission, and we'll let you know. Thank you very much for coming. Our last case is variance 2009-008. Location is 1123 Raymond Avenue. Applicant is GM Modern Design. This is an application for standards variance to allow the development of a second unit while not providing the code-required 25-foot turning radius for the two-car garage located at 1123 Raymond Avenue in the R2250 medium-density residential zone, described as Lot 51, track number 4411. And let me just quickly go through some of the comments we have. From fire prevention, fire sprinklers will be required. And they are also going to ask the existing unit for the new garage needs access door and ladder access to rescue windows and doors. You can get a copy of their comments if you need. From Glendale Water Engineering Section, individual water meters are required for each residential unit. backflow prevention devices are required for each separate unit. And any water service or fire line connection no longer needed by the customer must be permanently abandoned or disconnected. And applicant must check with fire department to determine if existing fire flow is adequate for the development. Engineering section, grading plan. For engineering division's review and approval shall be submitted. Remove and replace all existing broken and damaged concrete pavements to city standards, and separate permits are required for all work within the public right-of-way. And from traffic and transportation, they have some recommendation about the three-point turn and hardscape in the common outdoor area. Okay. Gevorg, you want to do a brief presentation?
Good morning, Ms. Fuentes. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, this last case for today is PVAR 2009-008, located at 1123 Raymond. It is a proposal for a second unit development, and turning radius is not being met due to some unit constraints and conditions of the lot. It is a 6,673 square foot lot, and it's in the R2250 zone. The zone does allow a construction of a second unit. The density does allow it. However, the width of the lot being only 40 feet makes it virtually impossible to meet code when it comes to building a garage. Now, staff believes that this cannot be done without any deviations from the code, including whether that be not providing the turning radius or having a smaller garage or even building the garage in the setback will still end up with a project that doesn't meet code, such as setback encroachment or backup space or smaller garage. And the applicant has chosen to apply for a turning radius variance, thinking that this might be the least impacting type of development or variance. The proposal basically requires the cars to make a 180-degree turn coming from a 10-foot wide driveway and turning into the garage, which is proposed to be newly built because existing garage is detached and the door is facing the street. The backup space for this garage will be 27 feet. However, the turning radius is not being met. As you can see, you probably already saw the comments from traffic and transportation, recommending that they pave over the common outdoor space to provide enough room for the car to make a lesser three-point turn to enter the garage. The problem with that is two. One, they will be non-conforming and they will be required to ask for a variance for landscaping, and also the intent of a common outdoor space is to not be driving on. So it will be basically breaking two zoning laws, and that's why staff recommends that you don't take that into consideration. The staff believes that, staff recommends a denial based on two things, that findings B and D cannot be made. One is that when we did the model for a three-point turn radius and the three-point turn is required to enter the garage with the traffic and transportation department was 2 to 3. 2 to 3 three-point turns staff believes is more than it should be, and it will be a burden on the users of the garage and might cause the tenants to park it on the street. And also the fact that it is a 40-foot wide lot, but it's not unique in its neighborhood. There are a lot of 40-foot wide lots. As I mentioned, the lot allows for second unit, but we have the problem of a 40-foot wide lot in that neighborhood. So it is unique in the city, but it's not unique in its own neighborhood. I also will, we recommend the denial based on the fact that these two findings B and D cannot be made, but if the zoning administrator would like to reconsider and grant this, I would like to stress a couple of points. One is that the model that we used for turning radius was used as an SUV-sized vehicle, and if a regular sedan was used, it could possibly lower to 1 to 2 3-point turns required to park instead of 2 to 3. As you can imagine, SUVs are much bigger. And a second point I would like to point out is that if a car came into the driveway straight and passed the garage and backed into the space, they won't have to do any 3-point turns to park. That is another point I would like to stress out in case if you feel like this should be approved. And lastly, there has been a case very similar, almost identical to this in the recent past, located at 1062 Allen Avenue, where a similar identical variance was asked for, identical 27-foot backup space, no turning radius, and that was approved. I can't remember when exactly. I think it was either November or October of last year. So that concludes my presentation. If you have questions, I am available.
You mentioned that findings B and D could not be found. And you don't think that being a unique neighborhood makes it a unique?
Because it says what is unique about the lot in...
It's in a unique neighborhood.
Yes.
That's one thing. And
It is in a
also
unique
the fact,
neighborhood.
the 40-foot width really presents a hardship as far as making the 3, 4. I really don't care
could
how
make
many
that
turns
argument as well.
they make inside their lot. It's going to be their hardship and problems, but
Well, I think you could make that argument as well.
yeah.
It's a
So
different
I think that's
perspective.
what made the Allen case almost similar to this case. Did you receive any input from any of the neighbors? Any opposition? or
No, I have not received any
Nothing from-
comments.
No
as far as
opposition, no support?
Supports, nothing at all.
Okay, I hope they bring something to the table to that effect. So B and D. Contrary, it happens to be one of those smaller width lots. So, okay, let me talk to Greg Mizakian. Thank you, Geword.
Morning, Ms. Winters. I'm Greg Misakian, address 6277 Van Nuys Boulevard, Suite 118, Van Nuys, California, 91401.
Are you the designer?
I'm
or?
the designer,
Okay.
AIA associate.
Okay.
We understand the lot is 40 feet in width, and it's unique, and we do respect the Department of Transportation's recommendation. The reason we design it into two separate buildings, so it will be less dense, and it will be cozy place to live for a Glendale family. And currently, the owner has one standard car and one compact car, and we will do our best in the future for the future tenant not to have any SUVs for the rear unit. Approving this variance will increase the value of the property, and
Don't talk to me about economics. You heard me. Okay. Although it's a reality and it's a fact that it's included, but economics is not an issue for me for granting a variance. So
Okay.
let's talk about the site and the project. Yeah.
Currently, the neighborhood has a problem with the parking because of the I've been there several times, and the owners they don't park on the streets. I mean, they do park in the garage and on the driveway, and the proposed design will keep that. And we don't want to touch the open space. We want to keep the landscape, since we're going to have smaller cars on the property. And the future tenant will be a family member for sure. It's not, of course, we cannot control who's going to drive what, but
And the size of their car, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But I think since the existing detached garage is further towards the street, this way we have more space to park on the driveway, which is not legal, I understand. But nowadays nobody's willing to park in the garages anymore. That's all I can say. And the reason we didn't ask for any approvals from the neighbors, because I don't think I find it any problems on the proposed.
Well, we certainly notified neighbors within
Yes.
500 feet.
Exactly.
And I was just trying to see if you kind of walked the neighborhood and see if there's any
Objections
issues.
or
That's okay. We didn't receive any, and you didn't get any support. But it could have been better if you came in here
with the
with
support.
something to kind of, support it. Okay. Let me see. How long has the owner owned the property?
I think 3-4 years.
And what's the total square footage of the addition?
Of the proposed unit in the back,
Mhm.
it's 1,341 square feet.
We'll call it Unit B.
Unit B,
Okay, so 2-story.
2-story.
You're gonna match all the existing materials, finish, everything.
Definitely the stucco, the shingles, and what we want to do on the existing unit, we want to increase the slope of the roof so it will match the proposed, because it has a shallow roof. So we are willing to. I don't think we have any proposal on the first unit, but the existing unit is in bad shape.
That's
design
a.
work.
I know, but that's something I need to know, because if the improvement is going to be beneficial for the site, then that's something I could take into consideration. But
Right.
you didn't include that in your elevations or note. Did you make any note saying that the existing unit will be, like the roof of the existing unit will be changed to match the proposed, so they kind of blend? And
We have that in the design board review package, which we already
okay,
submitted.
you have that in your package.
Yes.
You're aware
There's
of that?
I was going to actually mention there is a design review application submitted pending, waiting for this.
Okay, and that
application to be
includes the
completed.
revision
Yes,
of
that
the
includes
existing?
the revisions to the existing.
Okay, that's a
unit.
benefit
Yes.
for the existing, so. Anything else?
No, not I can think of, unless you have any questions.
I think I've asked you more than, okay,
Thank you very much.
good. Do you have any closing comments, anything, nothing?
No closing comments.
Are you the owner?
She's the owner, yes.
The owner. You don't want to say something or anything? Are you sure? Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Gevorg, any closing comments? Or?
I would like to mention one other thing that was in the report. I was going to go over it. I kind of skipped it.
Okay,
There's a porch right now. It's in the staff report, actually, on the first page. There's a porch about 14.5 by 7 that is only 18 feet from the property line, front property line. And I couldn't find permits. I looked at old permits and old drawings, and it didn't include the porch. It looks like it was built at some
As such.
time in the
But
past.
they're not touching
They're not
anything on
touching
the-
it, but however, it does not meet code as far as setbacks go. Front setback, the required is 20 average and 20 minimum and average of 23 in the front. So this porch is encroaching in the front setback, and it is, if you decide that you will be granting this, put that as a condition to reduce the size of the porch so that it meets code, because there are no permits for it. I have brought this to their attention as well, and in one of our meetings.
Are they willing to
Yes.
comply with that? Also, I noticed the driveway, the next door neighbor and there are like
Adjacent. Yes,
adjacent,
yes.
so it looks like one solid concrete
Almost.
cement driveway. Yeah. Okay. And you're listening to that comment about the port, so I
did
hope
talk to them. In one of our meetings. They said they're
you have
willing
no
to do
problems doing
whatever it
that.
required. It is
Okay.
required.
Thank you for calling that to my attention. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead, take this case under submission, and we'll let you know. And thank you for coming. I am closing the public hearing at 10:45 in the morning. Thank you.